Frank Hackett, United States Marine Corps, Korea. Frank served with the 3rd Battalion, 1st Marine Division in Korea and made the NMHOM landing in 1950. He was wounded several times, received several Purple Hearts and a Silver Star for his actions. He went on to fight in Vietnam with a line company, and Frank is one of my heroes, folks. Of all the stories I've recorded over the years, you need to hear this one. Frank said some amazing things. One thing he said in particular I like is that everybody running this country should be a combat veteran. Amen. I agree with that totally. Brandon Glidden, I want to thank you again out there. You have a heart for the Korean War, helping me to present these stories, and thank you for sponsoring Frank's story. And I'm thankful that a lot of you will hear it. And if you're interested in sponsoring a story or donating to my work, there's information in the video description and the comment section. And I would encourage you to do so, folks. A lot of labor, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears has gone into this project. And I know a lot of you have enjoyed watching these series of interviews. I've gotten so many comments from you, hundreds and thousands of comments. So I share these stories with others, especially our younger generation, folks. And the Korean War, folks, they call it a forgotten war. That's sad to me, because many people didn't acknowledge the Korean War. Many of these veterans weren't thanked, just like the Vietnam veterans. Almost 6 million Americans served during Korea from 1950 to 1953. We had almost 37,000 killed in action, over 100,000 wounded, folks. That's a big deal. So I would encourage you to share these stories and remember the Korean War and thank those veterans out there. We've lost many of them, just like the World War II veterans. Frank passed away 3 years ago, and I thank you, Brandon, again, for making it possible for many to remember his story. So God bless you. Thank you for watching. Share these videos, subscribe to this channel, and I'll be talking to you again soon. Get started here. Now, you were in Korea and Vietnam.
Right.
Let's talk about Korea. How old are you now?
I'm 75.
Okay, so what year did you go to Korea?
1950, right after the war started.
Okay, give me just a quick, let's not take a lot of time, of our involvement in Korea and how we got involved, why, and then what, you know, and take me into that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can answer the reasons why, except that the communists came across the border, and they were our ally, and we wanted to defend them. I don't think 2% of the people that I knew in the Marine Corps at that time wanted to go. In fact, when the news broadcast came out that they had crossed the, started the war across the parallel, first of all, nobody knew what the heck a parallel was. And we agreed right then and there that it was down in Korea, it was down in South America someplace. Nobody knew where it was at. We soon learned. It was a rush thing. I was destined for radio school. I never got there because we went to Korea. I was in the air support team, which directed close air support for ground troops, which meant that, you know what a front line is? Well, we put our panel markers beyond the front line. So if there was a mistake made, we were the first to get it. I was new at everything. I had no idea about how you would feel if you killed somebody. The first person I shot and killed, we had invaded the island of Wamido outside of Incheon early in the morning, and which we had to sit there all day till they could invade Incheon that night because the tide was 27 feet. I never experienced anything like this in my life. But anyway, I had this guy. I had his head right on top of the sight, just like they taught us in boot camp, which was only a few months ago, right? But I couldn't pull the trigger. I don't know what it was. Something kept me from making that little movement. Then he pointed the rifle. He was shooting over that way. Then he pointed the rifle my way. I don't know if he saw me or not, but he pointed at me, and of course it looked like it was about 16 inches big. Well, then I squeezed the trigger. I don't know why, but I just did. And it caught him right flush in the face. Instantly he was dead. And behind me was a sergeant named Willie Preble. 26 years in the Marine Corps. carry 2 pearl-handled pistols like George Patton, right? And he said, I wonder when you're going to shoot that SOB. And, you know, then I got sick. I upchucked. Well, just had breakfast of steak and eggs, apple pie, all you can eat. I thought it was great. I thought it was great they fed us so much. I learned later in life that the reason they feed you a lot, if you get a stomach wound, it only makes a puncture. Empty stomachs tears. Full stomachs puncture in and out. Easier to repair. They were looking out for themselves, right? But then I got mad because I lost my breakfast. I never... shooting somebody after that was never a problem. You have to excuse me, I don't do this very well. Fortunately, Willie Preble, old-time Marine, a lot of campaign ribbons, made sure I learned, and I did learn. When we went up to North Korea, we sat in place and we had a little rifle range. You could sharpen your skill, you know. And the local armorer, the Marine was what they call the armorer, he took care of the weapons. He saw that I was a good shot. Why I was a good shot, I don't know. I never fired a weapon before I got in the Marine Corps. I was born and raised in South Philadelphia, and there's no place to go shooting, you know. Not like some of these Tennessee farm boys that shoot at squirrels. And he tried to get me to use this .03, they call it. And it's a rifle from the First World War. And I said, you're out of your mind. I mean, I got an M1, you know, that's new, fairly new. I'm not taking that old, it's a bold action thing. But he said, try it. Well, it was more accurate, and it felt better. He said, if you like it, I'll get you a scope for it. I said, okay. And then I thought, what the hell is a scope? I don't know what a scope, I never heard this. Okay, I'll take anything, right? Even though I don't know what it is. When he mounted a scope on that, I could shoot. I couldn't believe how easy it was. Well, the guys in the outfit, in that picture I just showed you, they all laughed at me. You know, you got an old-fashioned rifle, you know, and all this. And I was the youngest kid in the group. I was only 18. But we saw, a few days later, we saw about 900 yards away with some communists. It took me 2 shots to get the first one. 4 to get the next 4. And I was on my way then of what I regret now. Killing somebody is easy if you can forget it. I can't forget none of them. I went on way up the reservoir, and we were overwhelmed. From what I gather, they tell us it was 164,000 Chinese, 8,000 to 10,000 Americans, mostly Marines. The Army flew in. General Haig was a member of the Chief of Staff then, a young guy. Alman, I believe the general's name was Alman. Anyway, they said, destroy your weapons and surrender. We can't help you. And O.P. Smith said, forget it. We ain't destroying our weapons. That's what we fight with. Tell the world we will be out. And, of course, I learned this years later. You know, when you're a private, you don't learn all these things in the beginning. The officers don't tell you everything is happening. But the odds of 164,000 Chinese, 8,000 Marines, and we won. We lost about 900. They lost 44,000, plus the wounded. Now, grant you, they didn't have any aircraft. They didn't have a lot of heavy artillery and tanks. We did. They were crazy for trying it. But what a propaganda coup that would have been if they could annihilate the 1st Marine Division, which I found out years later that's what they were sent down to do. The Army general in charge of that Chinese army had not lost a fight in about 35 to 40 years. He's never been heard from since. He went home in disgrace. And they probably shot him for losing. You know, that's the way they are.
What happened to the Army? They were overrun before you guys got there.
The Army, they did not have the leadership. Now, there's been several books out about this, and they called the Army guys cowards. Forget it. They're not cowards. They just didn't have the training. I saw truck drivers with their M1 rifle in their rifle boot on the side of the vehicle, strapped in the combat zone. You don't do that. They have a truck driver. He's a great truck driver, but he's a piss poor shot. In the Marine Corps, everybody qualifies, including the generals. Everybody is a good shot. If the Army guy's a cook, he's a great cook. He doesn't know how to fire. He doesn't know how to give him a machine gun, and he don't even know how to load it. But in the Marine Corps, you learn all of that. And that's what happened to the Army. They had no leadership. A lot of their officers just abandoned them, and they just the Chinese just overran them. It wasn't the men, it was the training. And I'll grant you, if you look in the books now, you'll see that from that day forward, the Army changed a lot of its training. And most of these troops were police troops, they're sent to occupation troops in Japan, who were living fat off the high of the land, you know, all that booze and stuff in Japan. Then they sent them to combat. They just weren't trained. The Marine Corps is different. The Marine Corps, I tell people, if your son joins the Army, send him cakes and stuff and write to him. Joins the Navy, be grateful. Joins the Air Force, he's got a good future because airplanes are a big thing. Joins the Marine Corps, pray for him. Because Marines do one thing, they fight. When you fight, you die. I've always defended the Army guys. They were not cowards. They were just overwhelmed. They didn't have the training. The Marine Corps is a difference that we had a lot of training. We don't quit. And we were determined to come out. The general said we'd be out. And by God, if the general said this, the generals are right next to God. They're just one step away. If the general says we'll be out, we will be out. And we were.
Tell me a little bit about the Chosen Reservoir, where it was, why we were there, and the actual taking of the hill during the day and then at night or whatever was happening there.
Well, I don't know why we were there. I never did understand. Like I said, they wanted to fight and we were ready to fight. It was the coldest place I've ever been in my life. They tell me that nowadays with the wind chill factor, that along the road from Hackett to Camaraderie was 100 to 105 below zero. That's a little bit cold. And I told my wife, if I knew it was going to be that cold, I wouldn't have went. I'd have stayed home. It was a miserable place. The people lived in mud huts. I don't know how they stood it. It snowed for 6 days straight. It never stopped for 6 days. That's why in the Chosen Few magazines there's a star. And that star signifies the first star we seen after 6 days, because we knew if we could see a star, there'd be airplanes the next day. And airplanes are the big thing in the fight there. It was, the reservoir itself was a solid lake, frozen solid. It was the coldest winter in 105 years of recorded weather in Korea. Why it had to be that year, I don't know, but it was. The Chinese outnumbered us, as Chesty Puller said one time, about 19 to 1, and it's their problem. They don't have enough people. I don't, you know, that's the spirit. They blew a bridge out, which meant we could walk out, but we can't take the vehicles and the wounded. And Marines are not like that. We don't leave nobody behind. They parachuted the bridge into us, and they built it up. They built a bridge, and we went out. Of course, then we blew it up, and they couldn't get out. And that helped us a lot because the Chinese had amassed all their troops right there at that blown-out bridge. Nobody farther down because they said they ain't going to go no farther. And we went. Marines do the unpredictable. You know, they're crazy. Look at me. It was just a good fight. Politically, we were there because the communists had overrun the 38th parallel, and that Truman wanted the United Nations to stop it. This was the first time the UN had got involved in anything. And that's why he called it a police action, which caused a lot of grief for a lot of Korean veterans, because VFW clubs and American legions would say, you're not in a war, that was a police action. And a fight would erupt. That's happened to me too many times, I quit going to them. It was a cold, miserable place. I don't know what else you want me to say about it. It was... Tell
me about the Chinese.
Chinese...
I've heard they blew bugles, human wave attacks.
They rode ponies. I shot a guy on a pony. And they would blow bugles when they started at you. and they would come in 400 or 500 people in a group, and you just had to shoot them all. And a lot of times they would come 500 in a group and attack us, and they would all stay there in the snow. And what I understand later in life, that was the Chinese Army's way of testing where your lines, see which were the weakest. They had the manpower. They didn't care about sacrificing them. We don't fight that way. You know, we fight to take care of each other. Blowing the bugle, it's amazing to be in some place and hear pay call. Pay call, everything on the base is by a bugle. Here these guys are blowing pay call, last call to chow. What does that mean? And they had noisemakers, wooden noisemakers, that they would crank, make a click-clack sound. I've seen kids do that, just to make noise to unnerve you. And about 1 out of 3 had a rifle. The rest didn't. They didn't have enough rifles. And when you shot the one with the rifle, another one would pick it up. That's how they kept making. It was a crazy experience. I could not believe the ease that you had for shooting people. And I don't know, I won't say that I enjoyed it, but it was fun. You know, it's like a target range. You know, we hit the targets, you feel good. Well, they were targets. It was just a daggone many of them, you couldn't miss them. And then we were set up on the line, and of course, anytime you set up, you have a secondary line of defense. You know, get too bad, you can fall back, consolidate your position. And this fellow was with me. We were in a foxhole next to a machine gun, and I loved to watch the machine guns. They were nice. And of course, they passed the word to fall back to the second line of defense, and you're supposed to tell everybody your next foxhole. Well, these guys got the message. About the same time, we seen the machine gunners knocked out. So me and this kid jumped in a hole. I got in there first, so I got the trigger. He had a load. These guys over here figured we had the message because we were moving. Now everybody moves back up the hill, and we're out here by ourselves. And just hosing these Chinese down, and you can't miss them. They ran past us. We just dropped down in a hole. And I always carried a 38 with me. I bought this 38 off a guy when we were down in South Korea. And he had made it. And the first Chinese looked in, I shot him. He fell on top of us, and we used his body to absorb the bullets that the passing guys come by. They would shoot in the hole. And then we didn't hear much shooting. We looked, and they were past us. So we turned the gun around the other end of the foxhole, start shooting them in the back. And of course, the attack got broken up, and they came back at us. We did the same thing. Then they went on past us, and we got a few more. And then eerie quiet. I mean, it's just, after all this noise, when it's quiet, you can't believe how quiet it is. Then we heard people hollering at us, and then we realized what happened. We were not supposed to be here. So we hightailed it up the hill, too. And then the lieutenant in charge chewed me out because they didn't bring the bolt from the machine gun. And I said, I'm not a machine gunner, I'm a radio operator. You know, and he was all upset. Well, when they realized what happened, they give me and this kid a medal for it, which, you know, you take them medals in them days, 25 cents and buy a beer with, you know, forget it. The medals are worthless, you know.
What medal did you get?
Silver Star.
Okay, I want to know about the citation for that. Again, describe the scene and where you were and what was happening.
Well, that was it, because we stayed in that machine gun pit willingly, which we didn't. If we know they were all moving back, believe me, we'd have moved back with them. But we stayed there. But just that happened. And because of that, we got the Silver Star.
But I mean, I missed some of this. Okay, you're in the machine gun pit.
Right.
And the Chinese are attacking, or what's going on?
Oh, yeah, they're attacking. It was during the attack that we got in there.
And you're just shooting away and...
Oh, yeah, this is a lot of fun. But when you're behind a machine gun, that's a lot of fun. You know, it's like, you ever squirt a garden hose at kids? Doesn't that feel good? And the more kids you got, the better it feels, right? Well, it's the same way. That's why they call shooting a machine gun hosing them down. That's the expression. You know, you're hosing them down, and you can see it. The tracers are going the same as you see the stream of water. And it was fun, you know, but it's dangerous, you know.
Are you conscious of what you're doing at the time, or is it later that you realize what you did?
It's much later, much later. Yeah, you're not conscious of what you're doing what you're trained to do, take over, keep the maximum amount of firepower. I was not really conscious of what I was doing till later, when you could sit down and think about it, and then realize how scared you were at the same time. Scared is the big word. Anybody tells you they weren't scared, they either weren't there or they're lying. I was scared every time. I was in quite a few fights in Korea, nothing to brag about, but I was still scared. You are scared, there's no question about it. I've shot a lot of people. I was lucky not to get killed myself. I've been shot several times. You don't die every time you get shot. I've been in, I heard so many times that I was shot in the shoulder up near the Yellow River, and I come back and I was taken off the duty roster. We were manning the radio at night because we had night fighters up, and I volunteered to help the guys because there's no sense in me sleeping around doing nothing. I'm waiting for evacuation. I can sit there on the radio and they can sleep. Well, my hands and feet froze that night. Just froze up solid from that movement. And I lost all the skin, like a real bad sunburn, and every fingernail but this one fell off. All my toenails fell off and all the skin off my feet. And the corpsman come, and he massaged my feet and hands in snow and ice, snow, water, and to bring the temperature up slowly. You put them near a fire, they get big blisters on them. Now the captain told me that I'm really grounded. Stay in the tent. Don't come out of the tent until we can get you out of here. And of course, I made a trip to the medical center and back. And they were parachuting supplies in. And here comes some ammunition, broke off the chute. And where does it come? Right through the tent, hits me in the shoulder, broke my collarbone and all the ribs on my right side. And they put me on a plane to evacuate me. And we got about 50 feet in the air and the engines went out. They shot both engines out. Now the plane crashed in the snow. I'm thinking, great, I'm going out of here. I had 2 Purple Hearts then, and MacArthur's rule was, if you had 2 Purple Hearts, you go home. I'm on the way home. I'm out of here, Jack. Goodbye, and I'm happy. I'm sitting in the back of the plane because I was ambulatory. Now we crash into the snow, and I go butt over head right on down to the front, and a nurse lands on top of me. I'll never forget this. She said to me, "Are you hurt, honey?" And I said, "Lady, you ever hear anybody being hurt good?" So she said, "Are you hurt bad?" I said, "You ever hear anybody hurt good?" Then I took the evacuation tag off I had on, pinned on somebody else and said, "That's it for airplanes for me. I don't like them. I ain't getting back on another one." Said we come out with the march out, which was a mistake. I should have got on the next airplane because the march out was no easy thing, But it's an experience that I would not go through again, but I'll never forget it. I won't say I'm a better person for doing it. I wish I hadn't. Every time I get out of bed and I hurt, and I do hurt a lot, I wish I had never been to that stupid country. Okay? I hope I don't make anybody mad saying stupid. It was a dumb idea, but we were there. And when you're there, you do your best.
Now, did the Chinese win that battle of the Chosin Reservoir? Did they push you guys down?
Oh, they pushed us out of there. There's no question about it. They pushed us back past the 38th parallel again. In all probabilities, I guess you could say they did win in the sense they got us out of there. But when you consider their cost, okay, you're talking probably 1,000 Marines and 44,000 Chinese. I don't think they won. Okay, we left, but we left of our own choosing. There, as one of the people up there said, that at that time there wasn't enough Chinese laundrymen in the world to keep a battalion of fully armed Marines from going where they want to go, and we did. Been a lot of great statements like that. Like I remember this saying one time that the Chinese were on the other side of the Yellow River. Okay, last night they decided to come over. We already knew they were there, some of them. MacArthur wouldn't believe it. They said, now there's Chinese in front of us and Chinese to the rear. There's Chinese on the left and there's Chinese on the right. They're not going to get away now, men. I said, what are you talking about? They're surrounded. How could we get away? That was the, the attitude. It was a good fight. It was a good fight. Cold. Marines are not made for cold weather. The snow packs they gave us was a big deterrent because it froze your feet. Had no ventilation. The snow packs was the best thing they gave us for the Chinese. That Chinese loved to see us with them because they were freezing our feet up.
What about What about the practical side of life? What about the food, the water?
Well, it was interesting. The food you're eating is regular food. I mean, you've got sea rations, which you're used to by now. We've been there for a couple of months. The local food was very different to me, anyway. I mean, I never seen people cutting stuff with a stone knife. A knife made out of stone. Houses with no electricity, no running water, no toilet facilities.
But what about at the Chosen Reservoir? I heard all the food froze.
Well, they had field kitchens, and anything you freeze, you can heat up. If you got a vehicle and you get it running, you just sit your rations on the radiator, punch a hole in it, it'll heat it up.
What about Tootsie Rolls? Did you guys?
See now, when we evacuated Hackett, they had already set up a big PX there because we thought we would be there a while, and they couldn't take the stuff with them. Space was a premium. They said, help yourself, take whatever you want. What we don't take, we're burning. And everybody took pockets full of Tootsie Rolls. Now, Tootsie Rolls froze like anything, and you take them. They used to sell big ones for a nickel, big, thicker than your thumb. You had to put them under your armpit to warm them up. Put them inside under your armpit before you could take a bite off of them. Tootsie Rolls kept us alive because they had a lot of energy. I've always loved Tootsie Rolls ever since. In fact, if you go to my house, you'll see a big jar of Tootsie Rolls right now. I'm never without them. Tootsie Rolls have a lot of energy, a lot of sugar. And you put them in your mouth and let them thaw out and chew them. And a Tootsie Roll, you can chew it and chew it and chew it. And that flavor lasts forever. And we ate a lot of them. It's...
Have you gone to any of the Chosen Few reunions?
I went to a couple of them. I don't go to much of them because there's too much tension. There's too many people in the Chosen Few right now that trying. Everybody wants to be the leader.
I hear they give out Tootsie Rolls at the reunion.
Oh, Tootsie Roll always has a big spread there. Yeah, I've seen guys have little statuettes of Tootsie Rolls. They make them. Tootsie is, you never forget it. I mean, that's the only thing you had to eat for a couple of days. What you could carry with you. And believe me, if you had your choice of carrying sea rations or ammunition, you carried the ammunition because you needed something. And unusual things happen. I can remember a night along the road that we saw some troops that were Chinese. And they were just in bad shape as we were. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. They didn't shoot at us, and we didn't shoot at them. They were doing the same thing we were doing, trying to survive. And I don't know what ever happened to them. They just, went off. But that's what happens in war. I mean, you also have the blood and guts of shoot everyone, and forget it. It's too miserable right now saying, it was 40, 45 below zero, and the wind was blowing like you wouldn't believe. Like I say, now they say it's 100 to 105 with the wind chill. Forget it. It's someplace I don't want to go back to. The Chinese troops were just like us. They were down there because they were ordered to. Politicians ordered them down. The politicians didn't come down. They stayed up there where it was warm, believe me. And they had no clothing. Most of them had little canvas shoes, and I've seen pictures of ankles that big with blisters from the fluid leaking out and freezing. I've seen Chinese walking on a stump of a bone because their foot broke off. I mean, froze solid and broke off. But by the same token, they would dig themselves in under the snow. They would lay under the snow. That when you passed, they would jump up and start spraying their burp guns. So Marines got in the habit of taking the rifle, and as you went by, you stick him in the rear. Stick him in the fanny. If he's dead, he'll lay there. If he's alive, he's going to holler. Then you shoot him. And you stop that from... And quite a few jumped up and killed a lot of people. It's hard to understand the Oriental way of fighting. If they die when they're fighting, they get everything. So And of course, we try to preserve life all we can. They don't care about life. To them, if they can all die in the glory of whatever it is their leader wants them to do, that's wonderful. The Marines say, okay, we'll just help them. The more we can shoot, the more we're helping them. It's nice to help people.
So you came into NMHOM originally into Korea? Is that where you made a landing?
Yeah,
Incheon?
it's September 15th.
And then made your way up to the like Thanksgiving of.
Thanksgiving we were up in the Chosin Reservoir, Hackett.
Did you have a meal?
Yeah, full turkey dinner. Everything had everything. It was great. We all thought it was wonderful. And then the next day we learned it was the last hot meal we were going to have for a long time, several weeks, because the next day, that night, early morning, is when they first hit us. And it was strange to see, looking at a hill, then all of a sudden the hill would raise up 5 feet. There's people coming over it. Looked like a sale day at Macy's when they opened the doors. They just rushed out. And like I said, I couldn't believe it. I saw people riding little ponies. And I shot a guy on a pony, knocked him off, just like in the cowboy westerns. I couldn't believe it. This is a modern era. Here's a guy riding a horse. But that's the way it was.
Why? I'm going to digress for a second. Why is Korea referred to as the Forgotten War?
Because nobody remembered it. Nobody cared about it. People in this country were happy the Second World War was over. First World War was the war to end all wars, and it didn't work. Now the Second World War was the biggest war this earth ever seen. It was over. That is the end of the wars. There was so much happened, so much misery, it ain't gonna be another war. And then all of a sudden, here's Korea. It's a small little peninsula, okay? Who cared about it? And Harry Truman called it a police action. He didn't want to call it a war. Ergo, when we went to join the VFW, the American Legions, the guys been there from the Second World War said, you weren't in a war, that was a police action. And of course you get a fight started. And that happened a lot. And it was just like when we come home, your local community, I'd walk into a bar, I could not buy a beer. Everybody would buy you one. But that was that local. Nationwide, nobody wanted to talk about Korea. Why get involved in another war? Let the Koreans fight the war. And that's, people didn't want to get into war. Forget about it. That's the attitude. And it's always been called the Forgotten War because nobody remembers it. Nobody ever said thank you for being there. Nobody cared. Parents cared. My parents cared, but a lot of people didn't care. And a lot of men get out of the military after the Second World War, and they stayed in the reserve because they paid them a few dollars a month. And what happened? The reserve got called back up for Korea. And they hated that. They didn't expect it. And of course, when the Korean War got over, they all got out of the reserve. The reserve was very few and far between after the Korean War because nobody wanted parts of it because next time they started, you're going to get sucked back in again. Forget about it. That was the attitude. But at least you did get some local people would be glad to see you home. That was my experience. They were glad to see me home.
So it was like the Vietnam War? There really wasn't a homecoming then?
Was no homecoming for either one. The Vietnam War, they'd spit at you. And when you went off base, when I first got back from Vietnam, they always said, if you're going to go in town, wear your civilian clothes because you'll have problems. And I always said, I'll wear the oldest uniform I got because the first person who says something to me is going to get knocked down. And of course, it got me in a lot of trouble. It's got me in a lot of trouble. But that's my attitude. I didn't care. As far as I was concerned, it was the war was something we trained for, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to see how good the training was. Can I still do it? And I guess I could say in a sense that I liked Vietnam. It was my trade. You have your trade, you do it. When you do your trade well, you feel good. This was my trade, and I did it rather well. In fact, I did it too good.
What did you do in Vietnam, and what year were you there?
I was there 66, 67, and 68. I spent 6 months with a line company, keeping them in shape. And the Marine Corps would not send me because I only have a half a foot on my left side. I lost that in Korea, and they felt I was unfit for combat. How they figure anybody's unfit for combat is beyond me, but they wouldn't send me. But I did manage to get in there, and you might say I snuck in. But after about 6 months, I was found out, and I was told that I was going to be shipped home. I was approached by some people that worked for the government, Air America, and they needed a shooter. And they offered me a little money extra over my Marine pay if I would go with them. And I said, that's great, but I'm being shipped stateside. And they say, no, we'll take care of that. Your records will be just like lost. And I stayed with them for 2 years till they caught me again and kicked me out. And I had a good time. I enjoyed myself. I was doing the thing I like to do. I was a sniper. I was isolated. A lot of people you go in your own mess tent, they won't sit with you. I mean, a lot of Marines don't like snipers because it was a trade that was, you don't give the other guy a chance. You don't give him a chance to shoot you. You get him when he's unexpected and in his own backyard where he feels safe. And it's surprising to hear this, but it's true. I could go in the mess hall and sit down with 3 guys at the table, sit down and eat, and they'd get up and go sit somewhere else. Nobody wanted to associate with you. But I did it. I did it well. I had to do it good or I wouldn't be here. Oh. Not easy. Most snipers don't last but a few months. It's not easy to go out 10 days in the jungle by yourself and not have nobody to speak to. I can do this. I'm a loner. I could sit in a room. Sometimes people try this. Go in your own bathroom with a book and see how long you can sit there. You can't. You can't spend a full day in there. I could spend a week in that place without seeing anybody. I'm a loner. I like being alone. And I like to pit my skill against somebody else's. In my early years, I learned how to play chess. And chess is a great game. It pits your skill and knowledge against the other person. And I play rather well. I beat a lot of people. People are amazed I beat them, but I have patience. Same way in the jungle. It's just like a game. You have to have patience. You have to sit, not make any noises, and change your ways of living. You can't use aftershave lotion. They smell it. You can't use underarm deodorant because they smell it. You can't pass gas because they hear you. See, you laugh. Everybody laughs at that. You have to change your whole lifestyle. You can't make noise. You can't whistle. You ever go walking down a country lane somewhere or along the beach and just sing a song because you feel like singing? Can't do that because they'll hear you. And there's people there just as good as you, maybe better, and they'll get you. They're there to get you just like you are there to get them.
Were you in Vietnam the whole year, or what did you say?
2.5 years.
2.5 years, okay. As a sniper?
2 years. And
so did you see combat over there like you did in Korea, or was it all different?
Basically the same. Charlie was a good fighter. I have a lot of respect for him. They would persevere. They were very good. They would carry more than you would expect them to carry. And they would live off of less food than we would live off of. The American side of the war, for every person in combat, there's probably 115 behind them, supplying them, logistics, all that stuff. Viet Cong didn't have anybody. They supplied themselves. And they, in a sense, were better fighters because they didn't have to have training. They've been in wars all their life. My God, when we got there, they've been fighting since the 50s. They threw the French out. I mean, they were always been fighting. These people fought constantly. And it was something they were used to. And you just didn't fight the men. You fought the women and the kids, the old folks, everybody. Everybody was fighting against you. And when you see a soldier, you don't think twice about shooting them. But if that soldier is a girl, you hesitate. if that soldier is a 6 or 7-year-old kid, you're really devastated when you have to shoot them. But when they're carrying a big bundle of explosives, what are you going to do? You know, the only good, I'm not say good, the only thing Korea and Vietnam did was turn a lot of young people in this country into drunks. I was one of them. I was a terrible drunk. The 50s and 60s. I hate to tell you how many times I've been arrested for fist fighting, public disorder, beating people up because they mouthed against the service or something. And I drank. I drank terribly. Drinking ruined my first marriage. I don't know how my first wife stood me as long as she did. The first marriage broke up. It's entirely my fault because I drank too much. There's no question about it. But you can't sleep. You drink to sleep. You drink to forget. And it's wrong. I quit drinking years ago. My second wife got me to quit drinking. I have a pretty good life. I don't have as many nightmares. I have more money in my pocket, too, because I'm spending it on booze. But it's all war does is destroy the youth of the country. That's all it does. It doesn't solve anything. I mean, you look around. Every place there's been a war, 20 or 30 years later, there's another war in the same spot. You know, I read one time in a book that said, since the day Jesus Christ was born, who was supposed to be the Prince of Peace, there's only been about 2.5 months of peace in the world. And 2.5 months out of 2,000 years isn't much, is it? What does war accomplish? Nothing. You know, it just destroys it destroys the youth of the country. You know, you don't see politicians over there fighting. You know, like I say, I think much more of our government if they'd led the attack into Iraq instead of sending them young kids over there. But by the same token, I wish I was 40 years old and single. By God, I know where I'd be. It's fun. War is fun.
Well, let me ask you some questions here, Frank, as we get towards the end. What should people remember about Korea?
It was a place that we tested the other side. That's all it was. The communists had no great objective. How far can we push the Americans? How far can we push them? And they found out not very far. Okay? Big companies made a lot of money in Korea. Somebody has to make the ammunition, somebody has to make the tanks, the airplanes, and all these companies made millions and millions of dollars. Somebody has to make the food that we eat. These companies made a lot of money. Okay? I can't think of anything else.
How about Vietnam? What should we remember about Vietnam?
Well, it was a place we should not have been. The South Vietnamese didn't even care to win that war. Half the people in the government were on both sides. Every time the Americans would plan something, the other guys knew about it because they had spies all over. It was half the people in South Vietnam hated us. How can you fight to liberate a country that hates you? I mean, and you never knew who was who. We should never have been there. We should have just left it alone. If the communists took over the whole country, let them. They took over anyway. What difference does it make? We lost all them people, and they accomplished the same aims. The only thing we did, they killed, what, 55,000? We killed a couple million. That's the only difference. We killed more of them than they did of us. But we left $5 billion in arms that they sold around the world. You know, and we still have conflicts in the world. What have we solved? Nothing. I don't think war has ever solved anything. Nothing. Let
me ask a question about being a veteran of Korea and Vietnam and an American citizen. What does freedom mean to you?
It ain't easy. And it's not free. They should take the first 4 letters out of freedom. Freedom is not free. I paid. A lot of guys paid. It's something we enjoy, we take for granted. Okay? My kids don't take this for granted. My kids know what I suffered when they see me. Okay? My Children have seen me out shoveling snow with my hands starting to crack and my ears cracking and bleeding from the cold. They know what war gives you, misery. That's all it does. And there's a lot of guys in this country that are probably living in insane asylums because of what they went through. You can't, I can't tell you a week that I don't have a nightmare, that I don't get out of bed and walk the house because I can't sleep from memories. I hate to think what tonight's going to be like. You know, you are resurrecting devils in me. It has to be, but it ain't fun. It's something that human beings should not have to do. Okay? A better way of doing it. Sit down and play a game of checkers, see who wins, you know, and not start a war over it. You know, you just caused too much heartache, you know. Now, I live not too far from Bedford. We talk about the Bedford Boys. I just finished their book, and that's terrible. The feelings that those people had to go through. Here these guys trained in England for almost 2 years, and within 30 minutes of the invasion, most of them were dead. What does it accomplish? People say, like you just asked that question, I'll tell you what that little bit accomplished. That accomplished enough time for the Germans to get a little bit tired of what they were doing and more troops to come in. And some of the Germans did get killed, so it made the second wave easier. But it's hard to think of, you know. War, I can't think of anything more horrible in our existence than war, you know.
What would you tell a young person, Frank, who knows or who takes its freedom for granted and doesn't know about the price for freedom? Well, how would you tell a young person about the price or the cost of freedom? What would you tell them?
I don't know. My kids know what freedom costs. Most of the kids that I know what freedom costs. I've seen kids talking, I guess I could say Jay Leno's show. He asked them questions. They had no concept of what it is. You know, I heard one lady say she thought the Battle of the Bulge was a fight of a lady losing weight. You know, it's a terrible calamity in Europe, but that's the way people are. You know, the only thing I can tell the kids is the kids are going to be the rulers of the world when they grow up. First of all, remember me, I'm your friend. You're going to run the place, I want you to be nice to me. And find a way not to have wars. Find a way to get along. You know, I don't know what kind of a threat you'd have to give the world, like that old movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Did you ever see that? Michael Rennie gave him a demonstration of the power some other planet had if we didn't stop our wars. And hopefully that movie would be like, that's how we should stop ours. War is a waste of your youth. That's all it is. I've seen kids that die that never had a chance to drink a glass of beer. Never had a chance to have a child, and they're dead. And you're not going to do anything for them. They're gone. You know, and there's no sense to it. I got shot several times. I feel it. I don't think there's any sense to it. I don't think I gained anything. I wonder when I go through some of the pain, was it worthwhile? And given a chance to do it over, I'd say no, I'm not going to do it. You know, too many people don't do it. You know, and it's not that many go to the war. That's the unfortunate part about it is. We got a lot of people to find ways of keeping out of it, you know.
What does the American flag mean and represent to you?
I stand up when I see it. It means everything. I hate to see people at a sports arena that don't take their hat off when they play the national. I just want to get down and tear it off their heads because that's a sign of respect. And they, you know, this country is too easy on that kind of stuff. I don't think anybody should be in the government unless they were a combat veteran. I think everybody running this country should be a combat veteran before you have a chance to run for election. We know what it's like to do without. Okay? The American flag means everything to me. What else can I say? Kate Smith singing God Bless America? puts chills in me. I love it. I think the world of this country. It's not run the best way that I think it should be, but it's still the best country in the world. It's my country, you know.
Tell me about the camaraderie of the Marine Corps.
What's to say? We all look out for each other. Everybody takes care of each other. There are no ex-Marines in the world. They're all former. Big difference. Marine Corps sends me money every month. I love it. I think it's great. But it cost me an awful lot. Okay? I think the greatest military organization in the history of the world was the Spartans. Next to them comes the United States Marine Corps. We're not afraid of anybody, okay? Even MacArthur, who was a 5-star general in the Army, said, I have to have the Marines invade Incheon because they're the only ones who can do it. And he's right. There's certain things that no one else can do, but the Marines can do it. Marines, remember this, Marines don't even get mad. They get even. There's the big difference. Never get mad, get even. And I introduce myself to people. I always say to them, my name is Frank Hackett, gunnery sergeant, United States Marine Corps retired. Don't make me mad. That's the feeling of Marines, okay? I go, any place I go to, they just drag me into the mess hall or slop shoot. Marines are Marines. I don't know how to explain it to you. If you ain't a Marine, you ain't. You know.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Well, if you want to get religious, you'll see that even in our anthem, there's up in heaven, the streets are guarded by United States Marines. Okay? We don't take no guff from nobody. Okay? There was a Mexican bandit used to come across the border, and the Army run him back. The Army got tired of running him back. So then they sent the Marines down. One time, the Marines chased him across the border. They never came back no more. That was the end of it. And he was very famous Mexican. You know, Marines have a comradeship that you ain't going to get anywhere else. You know, it's in the training. It's in the spirit of the Corps. Okay, it's as simple as that.
Obviously, you're proud to be a Marine.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Have people thanked you for your service to our country?
Sometimes, yeah. A few have, yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Well, sometimes a little guilty, you know, but feel pretty good, you know. I got my Silver Star from Harry Truman. He shook my hand, and I thought that was great. The man's the President of the United States. And he thanked me. I liked that. Then they took us downstairs and said, help yourself. There's a bar and food. We stayed there for 3 days. They threw us out. Don't come back.
Do you have a picture of that?
No.
Picture of
I'm not a picture person.
Why? Because it tells the memories?
It's part of your history. The history is mine. I don't want to brag or share my history with anybody.
Do you think our country's forgetting about what happened in World War II, Korea, and even Vietnam?
Oh, World War II is, nobody pays attention to that anymore. Half people don't even tell you when it started. You know, in 50 years from now, you won't even hear of Vietnam. You won't see any more hats. The only people you see wearing a Vietnam hat is the veterans, which I really wish they shouldn't wear them. I don't wear nothing. I don't feel as if I have to explain to anybody what I did. I did what I did because I did it. Okay? If my small contribution helps us in this country, I'm happy for it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Because I'm not going to be here forever. When I'm dead, I'm dead. That's it. I'll be forgotten about.
Well, I hope not. Tell me why you contacted me originally when you initially contacted me. And
you sent a notice out to the chosen few. And a couple of them called me and said they thought that I should come and talk to you. Why, I don't know, but they always they suggest I do that interview in the paper. That's the reason.
Have you shared your story much before?
No. No, and it took me a long time to think about calling you. My wife is the instigator. I don't want to tell nobody. I have 2 wives and 2 sets of children. And my first 2 children know very little about my military career because I never talked about it. This one made me talk about it. The kids knew as they growed up. And of course, they see me in my little older age, and I do have a few things wrong with me, you know.
Life-threatening or just?
Oh no! Well, getting out of bed no more is life-threatening. You got to be kidding me. You know, I learned a long time ago, which most Marines do. You overcome anything you get. I only have a half a foot on my left side, but I don't limp because people notice when you limp. So I learn how to walk without a limp. So I don't know nobody noticing. I don't want nobody feeling sorry for me. Okay, I don't feel sorry for me. It's the way of life. I accept what happened. I try to write a book. So far, I can't get anybody interested in it. You know, fact is, I was hoping you might recommend somebody in your publishing company to take a look at it.
I have a publishing company, but I have people that I know, so
Well,
I produce videos.
I would like to get this message across.
Well, after talking to you today, you can bet that I'm going to help you do that.
Well,
I'm going to read everything you send me, and I want to read this. I'm going to at least either read this.
You can copy it if you can.
Yeah, I've got scanned.
I have made a lot of politicians mad with statements that I make, especially the one about let the politicians do the fighting. They don't like that, you know. I mean, can you think back in your life and name 5 really honest, true politicians? Tell me who hasn't had some kind of a thing in their life, okay? One president shames the Oval Room, which I considered one of the greatest rooms in the world. He has to have sex in it. Yeah, they ought to, why don't they just shoot him and be done with it? Okay? We had a vice president in our lifetime who was an income tax evader. We also had a president who I thought was pretty good resign through inappropriate things, you know.
It's amazing. Mysteries of life.
Well,
Yeah. Let's finish the interview, and then I want to scan this picture and this, and I want to take some pictures of us there. But at the end of my interviews, Frank, if it's okay, from where you're seated, I understand the protocol of a salute, but for the camera's sake, could you give me a salute in the camera when I tell you?
yeah.
Okay, sir. Go ahead. Great. Thank you.